Well, hopefully this pisses off everyone. So we just got done watching. Well, let's go a little backstory. If you are completely under a rock, Ukraine and Russia are basically in a big giant war. Um, so the first military action, I think, is widely accepted to be Russia. Sent in troops into Ukraine. I believe they got to Kiev and bombed Kiev, the capital, before Ukraine was able to mobilize and push them out. Currently, Russia, who is known for just throwing mass numbers of people at a war, look at World War I, World War II, and just using sheer numbers of force in order to get what they want in a war. I think has many more casualties, but also has a population many times bigger. It looks like they're also using Iranian and North Korea soldiers, probably mercenaries that they're paying with oil reserves, et cetera, et cetera. So it's been like 3 years, but as the war goes on, it looks more and more like Russia will win unless Ukraine has American/European help. So Zelensky just met with Trump, right? Trump made some promise about ending the war. And it looks like Trump's method of ending it is I guess some sort of ceasefire with Zelensky and Putin. So Zelensky just met with Trump at the White House, and here's the funny part. So nothing really worked out. Trump's people, I guess, yeah, man, is there ever any truth? So if you read or just any left, they say that it was Trump's idea to do it in front of the media and have these negotiations. Personally, I think that's one of the dumbest things ever. But on the right side, they say it was Zelensky's idea to meet in front of like Fox News. So I guess a lot of the negotiations are met, and Trump basically said, "You don't have any leverage. You have to do whatever deal we come up with, and we're meeting with Russia to come up with a deal that you have to agree to." I guess there was a deal. Um, Marco Rubio is what the Secretary of State said. He had a deal that we would get some of their mineral rights in order to rebuild the country. Okay, if you read left-wing media, it's the dumbest idea ever. We should help Ukraine no matter what. It's not their fault. Human rights, millions have died. Okay, valid argument. If you look at the right, they say, I could just pull up my Facebook feed right now. Every other post, it's funny. I was going to start screenshotting me like, here's left and here's right of exactly what they said. But the point I'm trying to say is actually before this, like a week ago, the Republicans passed a budget bill. And it was supposed to say no tax on tips and no overtime, right? That's what they proposed, yada, yada, yada. And they're like, we passed this budget bill, and the budget bill is actually supposed to like destroy our economy. I mean, all of that's subjective, but most economists think it's going to destroy our economy. I have a good friend that's amazing at researching, right? He's pretty neutral. He probably leans a little left, but he's good at researching and always wants the truth. And this guy is intelligent. He can read. He can use AI. He can do all sorts of shit. And so I was like, yo, that budget just passed. No tax on tips and no tax on overtime. And he's like, yeah, which one? And I was like, I don't know, one of them in the last week. So he looks at all the bills that got passed, uses AI to search them, and none of the bills that the Republicans are, they're like, we passed this bill, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. He cannot find it anywhere. It took him like 3 hours to find the actual bill through all the mainstream media sludge, left and right, all the posts saying this, saying that. And he's like, dude, I can't even find a first person. I can't find the actual bill. It's like impossible. So I did a little bit of research and I was like, dude, this is crazy. So here we are in America. Huge bill gets passed. And as American citizens, we can't even fucking find it. We can't even read the bill. It's like 500 pages or some shit. So first off, we don't want to. But second off, we can't even find it for ourselves. So we just have to believe whatever Twitter tells us. So he goes and he searches it, uses AI to search it. And he's like, nowhere on this bill does it say no tax on tips. Tips and overtime aren't even mentioned. So here we got all the Republican media going, oh my God, the Democrats didn't vote for this bill because of yada, yada, yada. They just want to tax your tips. Democrats are bad. And Democrats are, I don't even think that most people on the left knew that wasn't there. I think that everyone just thought it was in the bill because the Republicans yelled about it. And so now you got the left people, they're arguing about some other part of the bill. Who knows? But no one's saying it's not even there. So now every time I see it, I'm like, hey, did you read the bill? That bill does not have anything about no tax on tips or overtime. So that was one instance where my buddy was like, it's so impossible to get through all the propaganda and sludge in this fucking country to find out what is real. So bring to current terms. So Ukraine, right? I literally scroll my Facebook feed, and on the right, it's like, oh yes, Trump did it. Thank God. We've been sending all this money, and he doesn't even say thank you. He just wants more, more, more. Ukraine wants more, more, more. Um, you know, I don't know. They're just saying all this stuff, and on the left, they're saying, "Oh my God, Zelensky needs more. He needs more." And then the funny part is they talk about like specific moments in this live. I think it was aired live on Fox or something like that. The meeting between Zelensky and Trump, and they're like, "Look at that posture. That means that Trump's getting his ass kicked, and he's just trying to beg." And on the right, they're like, "Look at that posture. That means Trump knows he has the cards and he's winning." And it's freaking hilarious how much everyone's so just indoctrined and just what confirmation bias. You're like, I hate Trump. I can find, oh, his finger went too far to the right. That means that he's about to say something stupid. Like, everyone just believes so much about it. So in the end, I guess Zelensky left without a deal with America. So who knows what's going to happen? So a personal take. I think it's pretty well documented. Russia was the aggressor. Now, did Ukraine do stuff beforehand? Maybe they were jailing Russians within Ukraine. Maybe they were, who knows, but I haven't seen that evidence or heard that yet. I know Putin claims that they were doing something against Russians in there and he came in to save them. Who knows? Putin, if we're talking about propaganda, that could be even worse than anything in the mainstream media in the US. So you have this argument. Is the argument worth invading another country? I would say no. And I think almost everyone agrees that Putin should not have invaded Ukraine. I think where the big thing is how much money we're sending there and how not transparent it is. I have no idea what the numbers are. Let's say it's 500 billion we've sent over there. It might be more. I feel like I remember every 6 months while Biden was president, there was just more and more. So let's say we've sent over 500 billion and it's all not transparent. So how many Americans have shell companies or subsidiaries or have a friend in Ukraine that has a nonprofit charity or a government business that Ukraine is, maybe they know Zelensky's cousin, and Zelensky's cousin has a nonprofit, and they're like, all right, we'll give you all this aid. Here's $100 million or $100 billion, whatever the hell it is, and give $3 million of that to this nonprofit that your cousin owns, and then I own half that nonprofit, and I'm getting 1.5 million. And I feel like it would be a really easy thing to do, and I don't know anyone that does it, so I can't attest to that. And it's really only come onto my radar in the last year and a half or so. But I know tons of people in military, government contracts, defense contracts, and government in general. And there is a crap load of waste. There's military bases that take millions every year just because they don't want to lose the budget, and they don't even have anything. They just have planes there, jets there, just rotting away. I know defense contractors that are like, dude, I have no idea how I landed this contract for $3.5 million. It's going to cost me about 40,000 to do it, but I just went with the market rate. So it would not surprise me. I've also traveled a lot, and it would not surprise me if I was in Ukraine and had a software business or something, and I was able to get a contract with the government, and they were just taking American money and sending it to me, and I was performing it. And especially in a state of war, this may not be Zelensky's fault. Maybe, that government can't be that efficient right now. It could easily be like, oh, we need this software to find out where the Russians are, and they're like, oh, I have it here. It costs $1 million, and Zelensky's like, done, go. We just got to do it. In reality, it could cost 10,000, but when Zelensky and his government are sitting there like, oh, Russia's coming, let's get a bunch of quotes, let's do some research. So there's a tough, huge gray area there. Yeah, so I guess the biggest concern right now is sending blank checks to Ukraine, which it looks like the right and Trump are very against, which, rightfully so. And then you have the left that's like, we should protect Ukraine and keep sending them money. And it's like, rightfully so as well. But how much? At what content? How can we audit it? And that's one of the big things with this whole Doge and Elon thing is nothing's fucking audited. Like, oh man, I mean, our debt is mostly like government employees' benefits, right? Retirement accounts, pensions, lifetime health care. Once you work in the government for 10 to 20 years, depending on which government or what your job position is, you get health care the rest of your life. It's freaking expensive, especially when inflation hits, and inflation's at 20% over 2 years, and you're sitting there, and the government that when they hired you, they planned on it being 3%. Well, that's gonna fuck some shit up. And how do you account for that? Almost impossible. You have an investment account that's making maybe six, let's say 10%. Like, okay, so we'll factor in 6%. It makes 10%. Good, we're going well. But for the last 20 years, since Clinton, and when Clinton came in office, he cut out hundreds of thousands of jobs. Um, and he had a pretty decent government deficits. Really, Bush with those wars, one of those wars. We don't really know why it happened. He's still. And then Obama just kept it going, and then Trump, then Biden, and then Trump again. And so now we've just kicked the can down. We're like, oh man. And the last 4 or 5 years, it's crazy with all the COVID and printing of the money. It's wild. So it's fascinating. It's fascinating all over. You have one incident, and you have all the right wingers saying that they saw this and they believe this, and oh, this is what happened. Zelensky coward. Look at him. He didn't even wear a suit. He should have been just begging and hoping, but he came in and tried to make demands for us to give him billions more. And then you have the left like, oh, Zelensky, what a leader. A true politician. Afterwards he posted thank you to America, and we need to give him more money to fight off the Russians. And it's like, man, I don't even know where the truth is. Both are arguments that are good. I mean, I guess all the evidence shows that Russia kind of unprovoked attacked them, and that shouldn't really be allowed in today's world, right? Shouldn't really be able to just like send tanks in to a fucking country, and yet they did, and we put economic sanctions, and apparently those aren't really doing shit because Russia's. I mean, I think they had hyperinflation for like a year or two, and a lot of their economic data is probably skewed, so who knows? Um, I've talked with a bunch of Russians, but most of the Russians I know don't live in Russia anymore. They've all either left or were already gone. So it's just a fascinating situation, and how hard it is to actually find the truth. Now we got these Epstein documents, sent out and redacted, and it's almost the same thing that was done a year ago. They said it was going to be big, shocking news, and it's, of course, on the right, they're like, "Oh my God, biggest news ever," and on the left, they're like, "Oh, nothing happened, same thing." And you're like, how can one piece of information have such a dichotomy of emotions and reactions? And that is how our life is today. But down on these islands, we don't really get any of that unless you're talking to a mainlander. We just argue which beach is